Let's go! Good evening, fans of Heartland Championship Wrestling, and welcome to this week's edition of the Heartland Highlight Reel. My name is Dave Little, and it is great to be here in the Dave Cave as we discuss the highlights of what happened in Heartland Championship Wrestling and around the Filsinger Gaming universe throughout the past week. And it has been a very exciting week indeed here on the Heartland Reel and in Heartland Championship Wrestling. Big show presented last night by Heartland Ladies Wrestling out in Indianapolis at the Indiana State Fairgrounds Coliseum. A very big show took place out there with some exciting action, which we are going to discuss here tonight. The show opened with the Dark Sheik. The Dark Sheik getting an opening match victory over Ida Mae Martinez. Ida Mae, very popular, has had a great run here in Heartland Ladies Wrestling, but she was no match for the Dark Sheik last night in Indianapolis. Dark Sheik doing work on the microphone and doing work in the ring, dominating the action over Ida Mae Martinez by way of her finishing maneuver that she simply calls Welcome to Die. Then we saw Unagi Sayaka. Still haven't learned to say that yet, but she tore the house down last night with a big win over Athena by way of a sit-out face buster. Very colorful, very dynamic Japanese wrestler is Unagi Sayaka, and she looked great in Indianapolis last week. Then we had our first tag team bout of the evening, a wild one between the team of Bale Spin, aka Zandra Bale and KC Spinelli, as they took on the team of Rhea O'Reilly and Saraya Knight. And it was Zandra Bale getting the win over Saraya with the bailout. So great teamwork there by the team of Bale Spin to get that victory over a double tough team of Brits. Speaking of Brits, next up was Martina, a wild one. She is unpredictable as they come. She took on the powerhouse Kelly Klein, a Heartland Ladies Wrestling legend. But Martina never did let Kelly Klein get her power game going. She took control right from the beginning, made it a wild brawl inside the ring and out. She was irrepressible and scored a surprising pinfall victory over Kelly Klein by way of a second rope dropkick. And then we saw the best singles contest of the night, or at least the most highly anticipated, as Kenzie Page took on Sherry Martel. Sherry recently back in the Heartland, and she has been tearing it up. And Sherry continued on her roll last night in Indianapolis, defeating Kenzie Page decisively and putting her away with the top rope splash. And that set the stage for last night's feature matchup in the Heartland Ladies Tag Team Division. Two very hard-hitting and unpredictable teams. The team of the Brit Fits, Lana Austin and Riho, took on the team of MK Ultra, Masha Slamovich and Killer Kelly. And what a wild one that was indeed. Teamwork was great on both sides. They were slugging it out. Masha Slamovich took all kinds of damage, but her team came back. Killer Kelly took over on Riho. Action spilled out of the ring into a wild brawl, which resulted in a disqualification. Riho shoving the ref out of the way to get disqualified and lose that match for the Britfits. So your winners by way of disqualification were the team of MK Ultra, Masha Slamovich, and Killer Kelly. And the brawl continued after the match as Kelly and Riho continued to throw down all over the outside of the ring area. And it was Riho who wound up getting busted open when Killer Kelly slammed Riho headfirst onto the ring apron, opening up a gash in the head of Riho. Riho got the worst of that one. She was fortunately able to leave the ring under her own power. and she will probably be okay once the dust settles. So that was, and we'll see these two in action again. I'm not sure when, because both of last night's tag team matches did have championship implications. The winners of last night's tag matches, the team of Bale Spin and the team of MK Ultra, will now move on to face each other in a number one contenders match for the Heartland Ladies Tag Team Championship. That match will take place on December the 13th in Detroit, and the winner of that match will move on to the December pay-per-view for a ladies tag team title shot at the dominant champions, Tasha Steelz and Big Swole. And at some point along the way, Killer Kelly is going to have to cross paths again with Riho, and you can count on more fireworks when those two come back together again. So that was everything that went down in Indianapolis last night at the State Fairgrounds Coliseum. Great action brought to you by Heartland Ladies Wrestling. As always on the Heartland Highlight Reel, we're also going to take a look at some exciting action that took place this week in Velvet Championship Wrestling, featuring the one and only Neil Lau, a top-notch stellar wrestling promoter in his own right and the number one fan in the Heartland. Neil Lau with a big show on Velvet Wrestling, and new champions crowned in both the men's and women's division. Kevin Sullivan took the measure of Moondog Rex and defeated Moondog Rex to become the new Velvet Men's Heavyweight Champions. And on the ladies' side, the ladies' heavyweight champion Lacey Ryan met defeat at the hands of Candice Michelle, your new Velvet Ladies Wrestling Champion. So congratulations to both Kevin Sullivan and Candice Michelle for their big victories in Velvet Championship Wrestling. Also featuring prominently on that card was the managerial appearance of the one and only Dave Little, managing Velvet Sky to victory in a Velvet Wrestling match last evening. So that was the latest from Velvet Wrestling. And if you would like to have your wrestling territory featured on the Heartland Highlight Reel, just give me a buzz. I'm easy to find. I'm on Facebook. I'm on the Filsinger Games message boards. I am on Discord. So wherever you want to find me, you can find me. And tell me what's happening with your Fed, and we will include you in the weekly highlight reel. One other thing I want to mention before we head out. A really interesting podcast that I listened to earlier this week. A good friend of mine, James Cast, does a podcast that he calls the Tabletop Sportcast. James is a sports board gamer par excellence. He does it all. He plays baseball. He plays lacrosse. He plays anything and everything is going to be on his table from week to week. James also a game designer as well as a podcaster, and on top of it all, a genuinely nice guy. One of the things that James will talk about on his podcast from time to time is wrestling. And on the November 9th episode of the Tabletop Sportcast, James had a couple of guests by the name of Don and Kevin. I don't know Don or Kevin, but they are both active promoters using the Pro Wrestling Superstar software package. Pro Wrestling Superstar, gosh, that game has been around for a long time. I originally purchased the paper tabletop dice version of Pro Wrestling Superstar way back around 1985, and ran a federation with Pro Wrestling Superstar. That was a good bit before I discovered Filsinger Games Legends of Wrestling, which is now my tabletop wrestling game of choice. But the Pro Wrestling Superstar franchise has had a recent comeback. A new version of the computerized application for Pro Wrestling Superstar has been released. And a couple of guys, Don and Kevin, who run territories using the software version of Pro Wrestling Superstar, were on the James Cast Tabletop Sportscast this past month. Very interesting story between these two. Both these two run fictional wrestling territories using wrestlers of their own creation. And they have both been at it a while. They have both followed each other's territories. And finally, it got to the point where they began trading talent. So fictional wrestlers from Don's universe would go appear on Kevin's shows, and vice versa. Very high level of mutual respect between these two promoters, and the whole thing finally culminated in what they called Convergence, their joint pay-per-view show where wrestlers from both federations competed together and competed against each other in cooperative fashion. So very interesting podcast. There is a link to that podcast in the description of this episode of the Heartland Highlight Reel. I encourage you to check that out. I encourage you to check out the Tabletop Sportcast. James talks about wrestling, football, basketball, baseball, you name it. James has got it on his table, and he has got it on his podcast. It is a great listen and one of my favorites. So that is what happened in the world of simulated professional wrestling this past week. Coming up next, this Sunday, more action from Heartland Championship Wrestling as the men of Pro Wrestling Mid-America descend upon the city of Memphis. Should be a great show. I am doing my weekend shows now primarily on Sundays. We have been getting about double the audience size on Sunday as what we were getting on Saturday. So we're just going to roll with that. Early evening on Sunday, probably around 7 o'clock Central Time, we will be live on the Epic Sports Broadcasting Network, my YouTube channel, with action from Pro Wrestling Mid-America from Memphis. In your main event, it should be exciting and I dare say controversial. The Pro Wrestling Mid-America Heavyweight Champion Jackie Fargo, representing the faction Whatever We Want, with Jimmy Hart as his manager, is coming to Memphis to defend his title. As you know, the Whatever We Want faction, or 3W as we call it, has fallen on some hard times and some turmoil lately. But it's going to be Jackie Fargo in Memphis defending his belt against a surprising number one contender in the Iron Sheik. So heel versus heel action in Memphis this weekend. Iron Sheik challenging Jackie Fargo for the Pro Wrestling Mid-America Heavyweight Championship. Also in Memphis, a grudge match as rugged Ronnie Garvin squares off against Arn Anderson. Garvin has for a long time been at odds with Jimmy Hart and the men of 3W, and as a result of some actions that took place last month in PWMA, it is going to be a grudge match between Ron Garvin and Arn Anderson in Memphis. Also on the Memphis show, the Macho Man Randy Savage set to take on JBL. And in tag team action, the team of the Crusher and Red Bastien will face off against the Vachon brothers. So it should be a good show on Sunday in Memphis. All right, that's all we have for tonight. Thank you everybody for checking out the Heartland Highlight Reel for December 8th, 2025. That's our stream, and I am out of here.